So it's easier to buy people to suppress people, and it's easier to control people. So again, remember, if the government budget is in reals and my income is in dollars, because how does the Islamic Republic get paid? It sells oil and gas and it gets USDs. So the higher US dollar relative to real, the more it could do with those USDs inside Iran. So a real falling is actually a benefit for it. The reason why this time it was a big challenge is, so the real falling makes the Islamic Republic richer compared to the citizens. However, it makes the people angrier and makes protests more likely, so that it has that. But also, this time when the real fell in Iran, it was because we have two rates of exchange for the real in Iran, right? The official one and the real one, right? And the real one is actually, the real is much lower in price than the official government one, right? But because the Islamic Republic was running out of US dollars, this time they allowed the real to basically be traded at the closer to the, like, the real price, because there are these companies in Iran that are basically private and public at the same time. Like, they're governmental and supposed to be private at the same time. There's some these bizarre things. Okay, they're supposed to be private but they're not, right? And they have USD, and the government wanted their USD, so they try to encourage these companies to buy the real and get their USD off their hands by allowing the real to fall and make these companies think, okay, we have to buy this real right now because it's worth it. But the real fell and they didn't do it. So they held on to their USD because they expected it to fall even further. So it didn't work. So it got the people out into the streets because people were angry, and the people saw that the regime. So it's not just that the real was falling, is that this was so good. This was supposed to be something that was in benefit of these big giant companies, but it was really much damaging to the companies that are working in the private sector, that have much smaller companies, right?
Like the
So that's
bazaar
what
people,
that's
right? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. The Bazari people. That's why the Bazari people were the people who started, who was their, who were the spark of the Lion and Sun Revolution. But the reason why all of these calculations by the Islamic Republic is wrong is a third threat to the Islamic Republic. So the first threat to the Islamic Republic is the foreign pressure, especially from United States and Israel. The second threat is the Iranian people coming out into the streets in the millions against the regime. The third threat is the regime's own people either turning against the regime or being less enthusiastic when it comes to supporting the regime. And this is the most important one. And a lot of people don't talk about this and don't understand how significant it is. And this is why the regime says so many crazy things. Like when the regime comes and says, like, oh, we destroyed Tel Aviv, or we will crush our enemies, we will sink the USS Abraham Lincoln. A lot of people think that they're idiots. They're not idiots. They need to create this content because they need to continue keeping the remaining 4 or 5% support that they have. If they lose them, that would be the end of them. That would be the end of them, right? And unlike what people think, not all of the supporters of the regime are completely okay with just killing Iranians in the tens of thousands in the streets. Like I said on the show, there's different levels of Durka. So we have, I don't know, 6 out of 10 Durkas, and we have 10 out of 10 Durkas. Like there are some people who are Islamic, and they, in my book, they will be considered radicals, but they will still be like, of course, our, of course, the Islamic Republic doesn't kill tens of thousands of Iranians. So you
Arvin,
need
can
to
I
sell
ask a
them to
question about one thing that you're saying right now, just because it's super related? There's a documentary that Goldie was showing, or I think you both were, where it talked about when the army that was the army of the king turned. Like first it was the Ayatollah, and then eventually they agreed to, and it was like a 14-day period or something. Is that still like the case, but could be in reverse?
I don't know
So
what
that
you're referring to. What do
they
you?
said like there was at some point that the army of I during 1979, the army that was like the national army, I guess, was decided to like go along eventually with the Ayatollah with the
No, they
with
didn't
the
go along. They
overthrow.
just they just set aside. They became neutral. That was so. This
So it
is
could happen in reverse or no?
well.
Like right now,
This
are
is
they
how.
still there?
So okay. So let me go through this. Okay. So um, I'll explain that. I'll get to that. Okay. So a revolution is usually successful when we get to the time that we call Saat Sif, or we call it's basically 0 hour. That's the moment where the armed forces decide that there's no point attacking the protesters anymore because there's no saving the current government. That's when we call the 0 hour. So that's the moment where some or all of the armed forces look at what's happening and they decide that the people will win one way or another, and now I need to identify who the leader of this revolution is and either claim neutrality or pledge allegiance to that leader, right? That's when that's usually when revolutions become successful. And this is what Princess of Pahlavi is aiming for. And this is why this third element is very important. And this is why Princess of Pahlavi's focus, one of his main focus, has been on creating a platform where people from the regime could join him and defect away from the regime. And this is why the information getting out there is so important, and why the Islamic Republic is trying so hard to hide it, not from the world, not from the opposition, but from its own supporters. It's very important for the regime. So when the regime comes and says that thousands of people who were killed, they were killed by Mossad, that's not for us. We feel like, what the fuck? What, like, do they think we're retarded? Do they think like Americans or people out around the world are retarded? Of course, it wasn't Mossad agents. Well, no, they're not retarded. They know it's not for you. That content is not for you. They need to convince their 5% remaining supporters that that was not us. Thousands of Iranians died because Mossad terrorists were on the ground inside Iran killing Iranians. Because even some of their supporters, if they ever get convinced that it was the regime, they will be like, fuck this shit, I'm not supporting this. Some of them might, and the defections are happening for so many different reasons. Some people, even though they're religious, they think like, okay, this is seriously evil, I'm done with this. But some people, they are defecting from the regime because the regime is not Islamic enough, because it's not showing enough force. Whatever the reason, the conflict within the regime is becoming more and more. There's a power vacuum. Khamenei, even if he doesn't get bombed, he's like close to 90 years old. He's going to die soon. There's a huge power vacuum that is going to be there. A lot of people are taking positions to fill that power vacuum. The 12-day war was very influential because Israel took out all of the main commanders of IRGC. So that created a huge power vacuum. Is the division within the Islamic Republic is huge. They're turning against each other, and all we need is for at some point some people within the armed forces to decide there's no saving this regime. This is a house of cards. It's about to fall. That's when the revolution is going to be successful, right? And this is why getting the information out. This is why the information warfare is as important as the military warfare, and this is how you get the regime to collapse. And so at the time of the Shah in 1979, the only military Iran had was Artesh. Now we have the Artesh and we have IRGC. The Artesh is still there, and a lot of people are hoping that at that 0 hour, it's the Artesh that will come and support the Iranian people and stand against the regime. A lot of Iranians were disappointed that it didn't happen early January when the Islamic Republic was massacring people. But now we have some reports, which I don't know how credible it is, that they were disarmed, that the Islamic Republic has disarmed the Ayatollahs, and that's why they couldn't do anything even if they wanted to. I hope that's true, because if that's true, it suggests that even the Islamic Republic is afraid of the Ayatollahs taking the side of the people. The IRGC, so when it comes to the Ayatollah and IRGC, this is how the way you should look at it. The IRGC's body is very Islamic, very Islamic. The IRGC's leader are very Islamic. The Ayatollah leader are very Islamic because they removed all of the more patriotic leaders of Artesh and put IRGC leaders for Artesh as well. But within the body of Artesh, a lot of Iranians have a lot of hope that these are still people loyal to Pahlavi or loyal to Iranian people, and at some point they're going to come and join the people. And we see signs that that might be the case at some point. But that's the answer. But Yuan, did I answer your question or did I miss anything? Let me know.
Yeah, yeah, I think you answered it. I do believe that if they think that United States cannot make a regime change happen from the air, they are gravely mistaken. And I wouldn't say that it's not going to happen, that they put boots on the ground, but it would be special forces operations, of course, at key locations. Not going to try
Yeah.
to control the whole country, just key locations.
So quickly, to just add one thing quickly to that before, sorry, BT just turned longer. I think it was very important that I explained all of this, but just one thing. I agree that if Israel and or United States, they kill Khamenei, they kill all of the main all of the heads of the three branches of government: Pezeshkian as the president, head of the executive, Ejei as the head of the judiciary, and Talibov as the head of the legislative, the speaker, the head of the parliament, and they also take out the people from the Sharia Aliyah Amniyat Milli, which is the council, the security council, the nation security council. If they kill those people through a bombardment, and then if they take out the main IRGC bases and the Basij bases, I think that will cause the fall of the regime. I think on Khamenei, obviously Khamenei, if they kill Khamenei, if they kill these people and take out some of these bases, I think the level of chaos and, I mean, there's no the main, and also Radan. If they also kill Radan, they will all be running around like chickens with their heads cut off. It will be so chaotic. It will be, they wouldn't even know what to do because the orders are not coming. They cannot
But the US
communicate with
doesn't
each
want it to
other.
be like that, right? Like, can the US and
Israel wants.
Israel work with those people that you talked about, that whole group of people that's there, that was there before? Do you think they would do that, or they wouldn't? It wouldn't. You don't do. We wouldn't trust to do that. Like that army you were talking about. Like if the US had a partner on
Yeah.
the ground and Israel had a partner on the ground, separate from Mossad, but
Israel has a
actually
lot of
like to
Mossad
hand power.
agents.
Yeah, but I mean, like
Israel,
the actual official army, somehow someone in charge could be like a partner so that there could be like less of that craziness that you said.
well,
Because
the
it
people
seems
in
like the US
charge of,
does not want that.
yeah, the people in charge of our Artish are the same as the IRGC, so there's not that much hope in those that in charge. Again, I really think like Johan is right that if the bombardment from air, if you kill the people that I mentioned on the list, I think Islamic Republic will not be able to recover from that chaos, right? I think it will motivate the Iranian people to a degree to come out in the streets. And when the news of Khamenei being killed comes out, I think that would be it. I think so many of the suppressing forces within the regime will be focusing on survival rather than suppressing people. They were trying to be figuring out, because if Khamenei dies, their mindset would be that okay, the game is over. Is everyone for themselves? Everybody for themselves. Everybody has to go find a hole to hide in or try to leave the country because we're about to die. Killing those people is not just strategic; it's also symbolic. It's a symbolic end of the regime that is going to signal to everybody that the game is over, and that's going to change the priority of the regime forces, the people who are actually part of the decision making process. They will be so focused on survival that in that situation, I think the Iranian people will have the upper hand. Jeffrey, did you want to add anything to this?
So again, if you want to sit there and provide lethal support to forces inside Iran, I mean, okay, so intelligence agencies operate in legally gray areas for a good reason, right? There's a difference between intelligence activities and law enforcement activities, right? So the goal of law enforcement is to ensure like societal norms, and police officers, the FBI, their function, the deterrence of law enforcement is threat of consequence. When you're operating in conflict, there's rules for conflict to be sure. I'm just saying that intelligence operates in gray areas because the people they're fighting at aren't lawful combatants, like the IRGC, which is a terrorist organization, very much by definition, a unlawful combatant. And so, if you're going to try and stand up similar lawful, unconventional forces, there's certain things you have to meet. There's a reason I said that having like the Shah be recognized as the official government of Iran in exile, or at least have the Shah lead a transition government panel that may include other elements of the opposition, which I understand is not palatable, that would then free up a lot of that would make the legislative and legal avenues of providing lethal assistance very, very streamlined. Then you can do for Iran what we did for Ukraine. That includes things like long range strike munitions and stuff that could do exactly what you said.
And Jeffrey, I messaged you on WhatsApp, so I'm waiting for your response. And I don't know if you got that a couple of days ago. All right, so regarding that, really, you didn't get it? I'm pretty sure I responded to you. Can you message me again? Oh yeah, I sent you a voice message. Yeah, okay, you're gonna check that. Okay, okay. All right, so
Armin, you had raised your hand not long ago. Did you already cover what you wanted to say?
no, I didn't. I'm just gonna talk about inbreeding, guys. Let's talk about inbreeding. Okay,
Finally, this
so
part of the show. Yeah. Okay.
yes, yes. Okay, so again, something that people talk about, cousin marriage and inbreeding in the UK is rising, and people are talking about it as something interesting and barbaric and backwards that is coming to the UK. But again, let's talk about the civilizational changes that this is going to cause. It's not just like something, I mean, it is ridiculous, but it's actually quite devastating, and the impacts of it are okay. So let me actually go through this. So let me give you a historical context. Cousin marriage was banned by the church in the medieval period and disappeared from the West, but has reemerged with migration from South Asia and the MENA region, the Middle East and North Africa. So in the UK, right? So in Islam, the practice is not only allowed, but it's encouraged because the prophet married his first, the prophet in Prophet Muhammad in Islam, he married his first cousin. And when Muhammad does something, it's sunnah means it's the way, like it's good. So it's not just permissible. When prophet does something, that means it's beyond just okay. It means that it's something that we should see as a role model. So it's not mandatory, obviously, to marry your cousin, but it's seen as something positive because Muhammad did it. So remember, the sources of Islamic teachings is the Quran and the Sunnah. The Quran is the revelation from God. The Sunnah is what Muhammad said and did. What he said is called the Hadith, right? And what he did, you could look at the Hadith and the Sirah to see what he did. So in Bradford, nearly 50% of Pakistani mothers are married to a cousin. That's crazy. British Pakistanis are 3 to 4% of births, but account for 30% of children with rare recessive genetic disorders. Risk of birth defects doubles from 2 to 3% to 4 to 6%. And again, beyond defects, you also have a lowering of IQ because of this. 40% of child death in Bradford were linked to genetic conditions. Over half of those had parents who were cousins. So health impacts, this is not the main part. I'm just going to mention this part, but then I'm going to go to the main part. So children survive with lower development outcomes, speech difficulties, and require one third more medical appointments. So basically, we're lowering the average IQ of the UK by doing this, right? And the NHS and Labour Party are accused of ignoring or defending the practice, calling it culturally sensitive to avoid losing Muslim votes. Okay, so this is what's happening. Now, I just want to mention that the significance of this, because this is not just like, oh, Muslim inbreeding, like a durka durka, it's beyond that, right? So high rates of cousin marriage in Bradford and the associated cost, like again, this is just an example. This is a report that came out, but it's everywhere, right? So the cost associated with this is going to come, like it's not like a lot of people watch this are like, oh, okay, so they're going to become they're going to have lower IQ, they're going to have disorders. Yeah, this is bad, but it has nothing to do with me. but it's going to have everything to do with you. It's going to, the cost associated with all of this is going to come out of your wallet. This is a huge strain on the welfare state. The economic cost of treating rare genetic disorders is basically 33% more medical appointments, as we mentioned, disproportionately drains the NHS. In a geopolitical sense, a nation with a strained healthcare system is less resilient. A lot of people don't understand how much healthcare cost is a significant part of the strength of a nation as a whole. So we talk about health, we we talk about health as it's just like, oh, people need to be healthy in a society, as if like it just sounds like something positive to say, right? But both from an economic perspective and from a strength of a nation as a whole perspective, an unhealthy nation is a weak nation, and you will experience this economically and your relative strength to the rest of the countries in the world significantly in the long term. And again, remember, I also mention this every time when we're talking about birth. There's a shadow electorate here. The Muslim vote campaigns success in unseating politicians over Gaza shows that a distinct, cohesive voting bloc can dictate foreign policy. So I mentioned that the demographic change in European countries is going to create voting blocs that is not just going to change your foreign policy, but also your internal policy. These are people that will be voting in line with views that makes a society a lot weaker. This is not a demographic known for voting for in line with values that we consider classical liberal values and values that empirically have proven to make a society stronger. So that is going to weaken. But now, how is that relative to inbreeding? A lower IQ demographic is easier to manipulate and control and make them all vote in the direction that, I don't know, the imams or the religious leaders would want. So it's not just that they're not higher in number, they're also lower in IQ, and which means that mobilizing them in one direction or another is going to become a lot easier. So the Labor Party is effectively held hostage. It must appease this bloc to win. So if you keep like blaming the Labor Party, they're actually doing what they're supposed to do and get votes. The problem is that your demographic has changed to a degree where if they ever want to have any chance, at some point it's going to be that all other parties are also going to be forced to take this block seriously, because people need to understand how influential a small percentage of the population is going to be when they vote. You know what I mean? So you might think like, you might have 5% of the population that from a democratic perspective they have as much influence as 20% or 30, because they're all thinking like, we are on the same mission, we're going to vote for this, we all agree that any politician that doesn't agree with this is going to be punished by us not voting for it. This is how you get 5% being as effective as 20%, or 15% being as effective, I don't know, as 40 or 50%. So you're going to see even some of your favorite parties at some point will have to bend the knee to this voting bloc because of the level of influence they have when it comes to deciding which politicians to support and which ones to punish. So again, this is mostly visible when it comes to UK's foreign policy stance, because the issue of Palestine and Gaza, Gaza and Israel is so obvious and you could see it. When it comes to internal politics, the effect is going to be much harder to notice, but it's going to be even more deadly. It's going to be more deadly when it comes to foreign policy. These are stuff that mix into the news when you have politicians, I don't know, condemning Israel, or I don't know, supporting the independent, like Palestine becoming a state. That is visible. It's news. It grabs attention. Like, oh my God, this voting bloc is giving us the worst foreign policy stance. But what doesn't get enough attention is that the same voting bloc would vote in a way that your internal policies will challenge the very foundations of what made Western civilization great. So basically, the foreign policy is like a canary in the mine for your internal policies, also going in a direction that will support the values that doesn't make a society great, right? So the refusal to address the medical data due to cultural sensitivity is also a canary in the mine, because it's basically a bending of the knee to this voting bloc, and it suggests the state is prioritizing short-term social peace over long-term public health. And the truth, a sign of a weakening sovereign, which is again indication for them bending the knee on a whole bunch of other things to come in the future. Anyways, so that was my rant on inbreeding in the UK. This was my TED talk. Hope you enjoyed it. All right.
Okay. I'm curious, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Were they low IQ and then started inbreeding, or was it inbreeding then low IQ? Repeat.
That's a good question. I don't know. I
We
think
know
it's
the mom
circular.
was illiterate, so maybe it's low IQ inbreeding.
Mhm.
Danny, you are next.
Okay. Hi. Okay. Two questions about past topics. About the exchange rate of real to USD. If the exchange rate open to the people gives fewer reals to the dollar, does this fake exchange rate incentivize Iranians to do business with each other in US dollars? And is such behavior prevented by the state?
Say that again.
So,
Yeah.
if I understand correctly, the exchange rate that people can use, like not tied to the regime, gives less reals per dollar. Is it beneficial for them to just directly trade goods for US dollars? And is that
That
controlled?
would be beneficial, and I don't think the state would allow that. Yeah.
Hmm, Okay.
Yeah.
And also, you said earlier you were writing an article debunking all the lies about Pahlavi, and I'm kind of interested in putting on paper some debunking of everything about the Palestinian narrative just for the sake of my own sanity. So maybe if you're thinking of making a website, those could go together somehow. I can't guarantee that I'll do the best job and be the most qualified on every topic, but A, I'm willing to do it, and B, I hope editing something is easier than writing from scratch.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe we could have a website that becomes our project here, and we will keep adding more pages. So,
Yes,
like a fact
yes.
sheet.
I'm picturing
Yeah.
like
Okay.
the flag of the king
And we
and
could.
the Israeli flag. Because we're
Yeah.
both
This.
standing
This
for
is.
the
This is.
same thing.
That's a great idea. By the way, Steph, you started this. So this could be the project, because I wanted this community to at some point have a project, not just talking, right? So this could be our project. And it could keep expanding. We could have like a fact sheet on, different topic, a fact sheet on Pahlavi, a fact sheet on Palestine, and a fact sheet on something else. Eventually we keep growing it. I keep adding more pages.
I think if Iran is free, most of the Palestinian narrative will get exposed.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty naive at this point. But just because right now there's Iranians dying, it feels more important. The causes are so connected. It's very like poetic almost if you look back into history. I never thought like it's very symbolic and it has so much meaning to the West, and the West is literally getting brainwashed by Muslim Brotherhood. So it's really crazy time. They need
At some point we might have to provide, like, give refugee status to people from the West trying to leave their Islamic
100.
countries, like come to Iran, because Iran is secular, and I don't know, UK is Sharia law, and I don't know,
Pretty
like
yeah, pretty
BT would
much.
be on the. Yeah, I will endorse. I will sponsor BT.
I'm already planning to divorce my husband and marry Nare if need be for a citizenship, but I will think of you as a sponsor if I need it.
But BT, you have Israel. You already have Israel.
True.
Okay.
If I don't want to run from bombs every day, by then we shouldn't have to, right?
I'm
Right.
pretty sure once Iran is free, Israel also doesn't like have to run away from bombs by that. Yeah.
Okay.
We
And
always gonna have to run the bombs in Israel. It's just less.
Maybe it would be a good idea to launch this website on Purim because it connects the two. Because, like, I wanted to. It's a lot of
We'll
work.
see.
I know. I don't know.
We'll see.
I just feel like it's so relevant right now, and I just don't want what happened on January
Not with
7th to happen
AI.
again. Like it can't happen again. So
AI will
like
bang
people
out
need to
your
know better.
website just like that.
Okay, finally
sorry.
on the list, we have a question from the chat. When Iranians say 57ist, what do they mean? I only heard about it in X Spaces last year. I wish to know where it originated from. It seems to be to the advantage of the Islamic regime to place a blanket label on a generation, but I do not know much.
Okay, that label is not on a generation, it's on an ideology. So it's not on a generation. I mean, there are people from that generation who support Princes of Pahlavi, and if you're from the okay, so let me actually give context for people, right? So the Persian calendar is different from the Gregorian, obviously, right? And the year that the Islamic Revolution happened was 1979, but for on the Persian calendar it was 1357, right? So when we say Panjo Hafti, it means that people with the ideology of 57, with that mindset, right? So a lot of people think that we're talking about that generation, but obviously anybody from that generation who supports Princess of Pahlavi will not be called a Panjo Hafti, right? The and I think it's actually a very helpful categorization of all the ideas that we're against, because anti-Islamic or anti-Islamic Republic is not enough. Panjahafti covers the people that we're against that are not part of the Islamic Republic, or maybe not even Islamic, right? And maybe even part of. So let me actually tell you, give you a list of all the people that we're against, right? So there are some people who support Khamenei, right? Obviously, that would be in this category. There are some people who don't support Khamenei, but they support Khomeini and the 1979 Islamic Revolution, right? So they support Khomeini's government, but not Khamenei's government. They think Khomeini was like amazing, but Khamenei ruined the Islamic Republic. So, for example, Mir Hossein Mousavi is one of those people. That will still be part of the Panjo Hafti category. There are people who believe that both Khamenei and Khomeini are shit. They ruined the revolution, but the revolution was a good idea. The revolution was a good idea. Like the 1979 revolution was a good cause because Iran was occupied by imperialists, like a puppet of the imperialist West. Monarchy is evil, capitalism is evil, Westernism is evil, Zionism is evil. Muhammad Reza Shah was basically aligned with all of these evil forces. The revolution was right. We should have been toppling the Shah, but Khomeini and Khamenei basically fucked up a really good cause, right? So this category of people, they should be included as like just and now these people. So this is a third category. The first category, Khomeini is good. Khomeini is good. The revolution is good. Second category, Khomeini shit. Khomeini good. So wait, let me finish this thought stuff. So yeah, Khomeini bad. Khomeini good. Revolution good. Last category is very important to include because this last category of people are a lot of times they fool Westerners as being on the right side because they're both against Khomeini and Khamenei. Right now, they go out and they consider to be opposition to the Islamic Republic. They hate the Islamic Republic, and people are like, "Oh, okay, so they hate the Islamic Republic, so they must be the good guys." Well, no, because they were on the side of the revolution before, and they continue to be on the side of the revolution now, especially when the revolution had a more leftist branding than an Islamic branding. A lot of people don't know that the revolution of 1979 was not very Islamic until the very last phase of it. It was a Marxist revolution and it didn't have that many Islamic people involved until very close to the end. And all of a sudden became an Marxist Islamic revolution, and then it continued to be Marxist Islamic even to after it succeeded. And the Marxists were like, okay, these like Islamic barbarians, we will use them to kill all our enemies, and eventually we will be in charge. Like they had a like the leftists had a they had this idea that we were the elites of the revolution. We were the educated ones who read theory, read Marx, and we will appeal to the educated people. But obviously, the common people need somebody to be managed as well. So we will use the mullahs and their network of mosques to mobilize them. And obviously, these mullahs don't know how to do politics. So once we win, we will be the people in charge. Even after the revolution, many of the leftists were still in charge. Like a lot of people think once the revolution was successful, immediately the mullahs were in charge. That was not the case. For a while, the leftists were still in charge, and they were basically cheering on the mullahs with the executions, you know? They're like, oh, okay, go execute this, go execute that. And the mullahs were executing everybody, and the leftists were basically cheering them on. And then once they were done with the execution list, they were like, okay, now it's your turn. And they started going after the very people who put them in charge. And they started executing the Marxists. And honestly, the leaders might have, like, I'm not going to be sad for the leaders, but a lot of them didn't deserve it because they were just young kids who didn't know what the fuck they were doing. So many of them didn't deserve it, right? And I consider them victims. So okay, this is why I'm saying all of this. The people, when you say Panjo Hafti, you're basically looking at a category of people who might not be supporting some of them support the Islamic Republic, some of them hate the Islamic Republic. But we consider them the enemy because they have values, they have all the values that has ruined Iran in the past 47 years. You could this doesn't exhaust all their values, but you could identify them as people if you want to quickly see if they're a Panjahafti or not. If they're anti-Zionist, they're probably in this category. If they're anti-Western, they're probably in this category. If they're anti-capitalism, they're probably in this category, right? If they're anti-Pahlavi, they're probably in this category, right? And usually the Venn diagram with all of these closely matches. Like if you're in one, if one of these is a check mark for you, probably the other ones are also a check mark for you. But this basically captures the chant that Iranians have when they say death to the three corruptions, the Marg bar Safasad, Mullah Chapi Mujahid. So this is the chant. This is a very popular chant in Iran. Death to the three corruptions, the mullahs, the leftists, and the MEK. So the mullahs, the leftists, and the MEK is basically another way of saying Panjo Hafti, which basically is the label with the people with these types of idea. These days, we could consider anybody. The easiest way to determine who belongs in this category is whether or not they oppose Princess of Pahlavi and his plan, and or his team. If they do, we will consider them a Panjahafti, and we will consider them to be on the side of the Islamic Republic, either either knowingly or unknowingly. It doesn't matter. Like some of them are unknowingly on the because unknowingly on they consider not to be on our side, and I think that's a very helpful categorization. And it's not based on generation; it's based on values. Did I answer that question? Like, was there anything that I missed? The person who was asking, were you happy with that response?
They look very happy. Okay, you have about 4 minutes left, so that was the end of our list. If you have anything else you
Can I
want to,
just say, it's kinda scary because it's like, I don't know, it reminds me of, like, even just in the US, like, always hearing commies talk about, like, we need to form alliances with disaffected groups and bring them into the struggle for, like, communism and, you know.
So, how? So, explain. Can you elaborate? How is that like link it together so I understand?
I don't know, it's just, common you'll always hear things like, "Oh, we need to, like, you know, disaffected group like, we need to, like, bring in immigrants into our movement and convince them that they, the key to making sure that they're safe in the US and don't get rounded up by ICE is fighting for the common cause of a communist US or Black Lives Matter
Oh,
activists, that stuff, and bring them into the
so
struggle
they're
for, like
using the suffering, they're using the
yeah.
people who feel like they are being oppressed as
Mhm.
their sense of being oppressed as a way to try to bring them to under communism. So you're saying, oh,
Exactly.
so what you're witnessing in the West is similar to what happened in Iran. So
Yeah.
the Islamists, they consider the West to be
And
evil.
and
So
they
the
consider
communists
Muslims
were
to be
trying.
oppressed and yeah.
Yes, same strategy. That was the exact same strategy. All right,
Armin, can I
guys.
ask you
So
about that?
yeah.
Just if there's any such thing as like a graphic or some sort of thing that explains all the different groups that you were just talking about? Because like I wonder, because you were saying there's some people that like hominy and some people like hominy or whatever, and which one's more extreme, and then you like go from the most extreme to the least extreme in terms of like, because I think people don't understand the West doesn't know anything about Islam, at least from last time when most of my life, and I want people to know the differences because and I learned it from Dahlia, who was explaining like the 2 billion is Islam and how she's like a certain kind that's very like spiritual. And she's like had to flee Egypt and everything. And she's talking about all these extremists and all these words just sort of all go together. And I wonder if there's some sort of like thing that just to understand the different parties that are all talking to everyone about Iran in terms of what they actually stand for. Does that exist or no?
So no, but we could make one. That could be another project of this group. So when it comes to the groups that I mentioned, it's not about, so it's they're all pretty extreme. It's not about level of extremism. It's about the brand of extremism, right? So,
Eh?
but
Hmm.
when it comes to Dahlia, I love her. By the way, had
Oh.
her on my show. I love
She's the
her.
best.
Okay,
She's the
The-
best.
but her Islam is not. I told her this. I talked to her about her beliefs. Her Islam is not Muhammad's Islam. Her Islam is Dahlia's Islam. But because she's such a good person, I told her she's such a nice person and she could not accept Muhammad's version of Islam. So she has made her own version of Islam and she believes in that. That has the Islam that she believes in has nothing to do with the real Islam. She just created something that she could be comfortable with. And she actually admitted
I
that
think
is,
that's why we need to have more Western countries because you can do that, but you can't do that. She had to leave Egypt.
yeah,
Like that's
yeah.
the whole point. You can do what you want with
But
the
she's
religions in
honest
our
enough to
country.
admit she considers ex-Muslims to be braver than her, which is amazing that she says that because she admitted that her connection to Islam was emotional and she holds on to it because she is not as brave as Muslims. So she admires ex-Muslims. She's probably my favorite Muslim. I mean, wait, hold on, I'm hearing
Yeah,
myself.
she's a great
Steph, do you hear me?
spokesperson for everything. Oh no, sorry. I don't know.
That's okay. I'm just saying that she's my favorite Muslim, and I say Muslim in quotations because she believes she has so out of the fold of Islam that I don't even know if she's a Muslim anymore.